everybody. Welcome to one of the LMM webinar series that we're doing. Typically, we've been doing men's Bible studies and talking through a number of other topics. Tonight, we're doing part of our fitness series, saying break up with your couch, tips and strategies for keeping active during the pandemic, kind of serving as a panel discussion tonight. My name is Kyle Pedersen. I'm a consultant with LMM. And I think I know most of you. I'm glad that you're on as well. We just kind of get us over to our roadmap for tonight. We've got about anywhere from 45 minutes to an hour, depending on the questions that you have. Really want to just highlight a couple things about LMM and fitness while we're having this conversation. Meet our panelists. Then we have two panelists in to join us who are fitness professionals. And then we've got a couple questions that were submitted ahead of time. And then, of course, we'll take some questions that you guys have on the panel as you join us as well. So LMM's a men's ministry. Why are we talking fitness tonight on a Monday night and saving this for posterity? Kind of what's up on the screen. You know, I'm going back about 5 years. We had a couple interest groups, local groups around the country, namely one in Iowa, that said, hey, you know what, can we throw LMM's name on a fitness initiative that we're doing? And that was Team LMM on RegBri, which is a 5-day, 7-day bike ride across Iowa. We've done some active events for some of the outdoor ministries, such as Come to the Water. And we've had some fitness sessions at the conferences, the triennials that we've run in the past. And just if you've not heard about it yet, LMM is starting to develop some new programming around men's health and wellness and around men's fitness. And we're excited to share details soon. Still working on getting everything finalized. So now, as we look at the weird year that 2020 is, the pastor at the church that I go to says, you know what? At the end of 2020, we're all going to end up as either a hunk, a chunk, or a drunk. And so we joke about that a little bit, saying, you know, how are we self-medicating? You know, are we self-medicating with some good things or some things that are probably not as wise? And so we wanted to provide some thought leadership around keeping you active. And tonight we've got a discussion led by a couple fitness professionals who graciously have agreed to just share their wisdom tonight. And so throughout the evening, we've got the chat boxes. We've got a couple questions that are, well, if you have questions or comments or clarifications, please enter those in the chat. We can definitely stop and interject as we need to. And so with that, I'm going to go ahead and move us into, I guess before I do that, anybody from the rest of the LMM team like to offer any welcome or insight before we turn it over to our opportunity to meet our panelists?
I would just welcome all of you here tonight. Kyle has been working hard on this initiative for the last couple of months, and I'm looking forward to seeing where we take this in the future. And thank you to our panelists for volunteering your time to share in this conversation.
Excellent. Thank you, John. So moving into meeting our panelists, we've got two fitness professionals who are on. We've got Jack Johnson and John Hindley from Des Moines, Iowa and Atlanta, Georgia, respectively. And guys, I know I asked you to think about just asking a couple questions about, or introducing yourselves. You know, how did God lead you into the fitness profession? You know, how do you what do you do specifically in the healthcare fitness space, and maybe a little bit of your story. So you guys can flip a coin and decide who goes first.
I can start off here, if that's okay, John. Since I see my name on the top there, so I'll go first. My name is Jack Johnson, and as you can see, I have a master's degree in exercise physiology. So that's what I studied at Iowa State University. I originally went to college, went to Wartburg College, graduated with a biology major, looking at potential pre-med, and decided my senior year to change it up a bit and apply to grad school in exercise physiology. I'd taken 0 classes in any exercise related classes in undergrad, and I was going to grad school now to study exercise because I really was changing majors essentially. And wanted to learn more about how to take care of my body and help others to prevent diseases and prevent injuries and illnesses through exercise and wellness. And from there, I graduated in 2006 from Iowa State, and then I went to Des Moines to work for Aspen Athletic Clubs. So this is a organization. We had about 6 clubs in the area, and I was working when I first started as a fitness counselor, so just counseling people to become new members. Eventually became a general manager of the club, managing lots of different things, encouraging people to start fitness programs. And then I eventually transitioned into becoming more of a personal trainer and still doing some managing, and also a running coach. So this happened about 4 or 5 years ago. And while kind of during this transition, I also started teaching at Grandview University. I teach a couple classes there. I've taught nutrition. The main class I teach is called Lifetime Fitness and Wellness. So I get to talk to college kids about wellness and health and fitness. So that's my basic background. And I have some future plans of potentially transitioning into healthcare here in the future.
Thanks, Jack. Appreciate that. John, what about you?
Hi, I'm John Hindley. I'm a certified personal trainer in Atlanta. I've been here about 4 years now, after some time in Indiana, and my start where I got was in Des Moines, Iowa. The way God put me into this was having a rough year, like a few people are having this year, and decided to self-medicate by just doing what I know and running and exercising, and getting the high and the calming effects of that before realizing that it wasn't enough. So then I turned to God, who was more than enough, and he graciously gave me some openings, actually through Jack and the gym Aspen that he was working through. I was encouraged to kind of take a career change into that. I'd done a lot of running, made a lot of friends and a good group of people through doing that. And but just met a lot of people in a certain time of their life where they kind of stopped being active. A lot of times it was pain or other issues that caused that. And so that was something I was actually able to look into and study on. And getting into this career was, for me, just helping others to be able to enjoy that. Being active was always easy for me, and I was noticing it's not so easy for everybody else. And having a career in fitness makes it even easier to stay fit and do that. But the passion I really had was to help others. So I had a wonderful boss that I had at the time. Started getting into corrective exercise and injuries, and finding out so many people had been hurt at one time in their life, or the things they used to do for fun started being painful and they stopped, or work kept people inactive that way, and dealing with that kind of one of the topics we're touching with is what really fueled that. I started out kind of as a running coach and doing that stuff that was fun. When I moved down to Atlanta, I really was seeking God on what that would be for me down here. We have one of the largest races in the world down here, so there are thousands of runners faster than me. There are many trainers probably smarter than me. So I said, God, let me see what you've got for me down here and where I can fit. And it really was that, helping people with injuries and just be able to do stuff that was fun without hurting that way. So I got more training and corrective exercise. Also able to deal with nutrition, and that was a big part of it. People are finding out now how much that is a part of people's health and issues that way. So we're trying to take kind of a more holistic approach and how to help with that, and also finding out how much it dives into that spiritual aspect. Also, it's been exciting. So that's kind of where I'm at now.
Thanks, John. Appreciate that.
Yeah.
All right. Well, I'm going to jump over. We've got a couple of questions for discussion, and just so we're having basically more of a roundtable panel, I'm going to stop my share so basically the Zoom window's up a little bit bigger, things like that. And so I've got a couple softball questions for you guys early on here, just to get us going. And for the guys that are attending, watching this, would love to have you either enter your additional questions, clarifying questions in the chat, or just indicate and jump in when we're asking for some questions here in a bit. So for John and Jack, if you guys want to, I'll ask the question. You guys can kind of indicate, hey, let me start with that, or hey, I'll defer to you, however you guys want to do it that way. So from your perspectives in working in the industry, why is it important to maintain an active lifestyle in general, but even more importantly now during just the craziness of the pandemic in 2020?
You want to start it out? I started the first one, John. Go for it.
Sure. One of the biggest things is kind of what I touched on in my path along to it, was just health, more than just physical health, mental health, and just how people go through their day, and just realizing that connection. God just made us active people, and our bodies work best that way. There's certain chemicals that we get as soon as we're active and doing stuff. It doesn't have to be exercise. It could be working a job construction and doing things that way, that actually makes our body, helps it to work the way it's supposed to. And looking at that whole approach is part of our health. When we don't get sleep, there's a lot of stress and anxiety and stuff that comes along with that. Not being active is the same thing. There's just a calming effect that you get when you're doing that. And when our bodies aren't doing that, there's always other things that we try to reach for, kind of idols, so to say, that don't work very well. And then once that path starts of not having that, you forget how it is. I have so many people that get back into the training, and just the good feeling that they get every day of waking up and wanting their body wanting to be active as opposed to not. And especially in a time like this where you're looking at sickness, there's already reports and studies out that show the dramatic difference between people that are just slightly active and not, and how much things are affecting them that way. So.
Yeah, I absolutely agree. I mean, obviously in this pandemic, it's so easy to get cooped up in your house and sit around all day and basically be on Zoom, and you can do all your work now from home, which is crazy. So you have every excuse now in the world to not leave and just to kind of hang out and not be active. And like Kyle said from the pastor, you're either going to be a hunk or a chunk. And I think that's true. I actually kind of took it the opposite way, where I started a running streak as soon as the pandemic started. And I thought, I'm going to run as many days as I can in a row to stay consistent with this. And I got, up to, I think I had been up to 100 and something days in a row where I'd run. And then God reminded me that he's more important, and I got injured from it. I injured my calf muscle. So, there's things that you can take yourself too much into things, and obviously there's a balance. So when you make that your obsession and you focus too much on that, then it can be problematic. But also, if you're not doing it at all and you're saying, "Oh, I don't need to do this. I don't want exercise to be my idol, so I won't do it at all." Well, that's also something that is not. I don't think it's not taking care of your temple, and that's important for God also to make sure that you're healthy, and not only physically but mentally. And especially in this pandemic, people can get really mentally in a tough spot with not being around other people. And one way to boost our mental health is physical fitness, and even nutrition is a big part of it. So it's trying to find that balance. And for me personally, exercise is kind of a temporary, it's a sacrifice for something better in the future. And I think that there's a lot of correlation there with our faith, is making sacrifices and giving up things that maybe are beneficial short term, that we know that will help us in the long run in the future. So that's an important part for me personally, is why I value exercise. But there's, as with anything, you can take it too far, and that becomes the main thing, and that's not the main thing.
Thank you, Jack. Appreciate that. Maybe let's do one more from some of the questions that were submitted previously, and then maybe we can turn over to the guys that are on the Zoom call tonight. What advice do both of you have for somebody who may have some extra weight on them or might have some extra years on them and just can't, whose bodies don't like high impact activities. Where do they start with either, just high impact, just, yeah, is painful.
Yeah, I mean, I think that a lot of people think of exercise as you have to get a sweat worked up and you have to work really hard to see results, or it's not worth it doing it at all. And that's a pretty big myth. The research indicates that if you can do moderate activity, which is getting your heart rate up to, just 50% of your maximum, which is not very high, for 30 minutes, 5 days a week, that's like the benefits of that are really, really good. You can do that in 10-minute bouts at a time. So you can do 3 10-minute bouts every single, a day. It doesn't really matter how long you do those exercise bouts for, as long as you can accumulate about 150 minutes a week of moderate activity, not vigorous, moderate, then you will see massive benefits from that. The difference between being sedentary and doing that 150 minutes, the health benefits are exponential. So I think the myth of thinking that you have to push really hard and do CrossFit to be in shape or to even exercise at all, even running is pretty much vigorous exercise. So if you run at all, you are doing something harder than what is even recommended for you to do. So realizing that benefits come from not a lot of work is helpful, and doing something is better than nothing. So even doing half of that amount of time is going to help you mentally. It's going to help you physically. It's going to extend your life, really, truly. So I think the starting point is you don't have to be all in 100%. It's just doing something to move you closer to what is the quote unquote average.
Yeah, I agree. And I think one of the biggest things is just that idea of exercise having to be that rigorous, or even the idea of exercise. I mean, you don't see a lot of guys that work construction and have these rigorous jobs needing to go to the gym afterwards, unless they're going just to hang out with people that way. They get enough of it as they are. With my job, and especially with the move down here, I've moved a couple times while having the same business. And then my schedule just gets crazy. So for me, a workout was the 2 hours that I get to take my kids to the park and not sitting on the side with the other dads with my phone, and then me just being engaged and then moving around that way. It's realizing, hey, the store I go to all the time is like 2 blocks away that I get in my car and drive to, and maybe I could just walk to that. Or when I worked at the Aspen with Jack, it was just a couple miles to work and there was a shower there. So I took that. Looking at some things you're wanting to do in your life and finding the activity in it and realizing, hey, I don't need to drive to that, or I don't need to do that, or this is something my family's wanting to be anyway, or just most of the clients I have at a certain age, or I just want to be able to keep up with my kids or my grandkids. And so I say, well, then just do that to start. Keep up with your grandkids. Just follow them around and do that, and getting that activity. And it's a great start. It's not as much how much can we do, how fast can you get to these results. It's just getting your body used to moving every day. And after a while, a pretty short time of just getting that active during the day, your body gets positively reinforced. To where, I mean, there's a lot of people that are almost addicted to it, to where they're just antsy if they don't get something, and your body actually does get to a point of homeostasis where it enjoys being active. And there's just that little hump that you get over of just moving around and doing stuff. That is a big start. And it doesn't, I mean, I had one client today who said, oh, this stuff's kind of fun, but I just need to go find a sport somewhere. But she's never been in a sport in her life. So she's like, is there an adult soccer league? And her body's in no position to go out and just start playing soccer. But I'm like, hey, our kids go to the same school, and there's nothing organized around it. There's a huge park with 2 miles of beautiful trails. Just write a note and sit it on the front door there saying, hey, walking group, anybody come meet me at this time after I dump my kids off. They got some time in the day. And so she's already, by the end of our session, she already had this note filled out to go sit there and say, hey, let's get some people to get up and just start going for a walk in the morning. And that's really all it takes to get started.
I think there's some parallels too, like what John was saying about once you get started, it does get easier. And then you start to crave the exercise. And a lot of people that are not exercising currently or haven't really ever been on a fitness routine are like, are you kidding me? That's absolutely crazy. I've never enjoyed running. I've never enjoyed like exercising consistently. So that just sounds really foreign to me. but it also, there's some parallels there with even some of the disciplines we have with our faith, where, you know, reading the Bible for some people sounds just absolutely excruciatingly boring and horrible. But once you start doing it on a consistent basis and getting into it, you do have some of that addiction to it almost, where you want to come back to it, and and you get into a groove, and you need that consistently every day to fuel you. And that's similar to the exercise, I think, is where at first maybe you're not really thinking this is going to be something you want to do consistently, or it's going to be a struggle every time you get up and do it. Kind of sometimes like starting, you know, reading through the Bible in a certain area where it's not maybe extremely exciting, but you know you need to do it. And then eventually you're like, this is amazing, I need this every day. So there's some parallels there, I think.
Appreciate that, guys. I might pause for a moment just for the fellows that have joined us. I've got a list of other questions I can keep walking through, but since some of those questions were submitted by people that aren't necessarily on the call tonight, wanted to turn over to you. So for the guys in attendance, what questions do you have for Jack and John?
Kyle, I do have one, and one thing is what would you consider moderate exercise? You know, I'm 70 years old. I'm retired. I play golf 3 or 4 times a week. In fact, that's why I barely got here tonight. We just finished the match, had to drive home about an hour and a half to get here. But you know, that's really the only thing I'm doing other than that. Is that a moderate exercise enough to do it? I mean, we play year round, and so it's not like something I quit in the wintertime. But you know, 5 hours out, and most of the time you're riding a cart, but you still are walking. You're doing everything else. What is something like that reasonable?
Yeah, I mean, it definitely is. Like I had said before, something is better than nothing. In moderate exercise, for golfing, it's kind of interesting. I mean, if you're riding the cart around, your heart rate's probably not getting up that high in most situations, or you're just hopping out, walking over, hitting the shot. So there is activity going on. You are moving around, so that's very beneficial. I have a couple clients that is kind of what they do for their cardio. They do strength training with me a couple days a week, but they're just doing golfing. I mean, one of the guys is 83 years old. Another guy I trained that's 80, and if they can move around and golf, 18 holes, that's really good for them for 5 hours worth of just moving consistently. I mean, you're on the cart, but you're still moving. You're still getting up and down, sitting down, standing up, getting around. And I do think that for him, for sure, I know that does work well for his cardio. But he obviously knows he could do a little bit more. If you were to structure some more things, maybe in supplemental to that is beneficial. But I understand that golfing does take up a lot of time. So doing stuff beyond that, it's like, really, I have to go golf for this long and I'm getting some activity, then I have to do more beyond that. I would say just maybe 1 or 2 times a week, try to do something that's a little bit more what you consider more significant. So biking maybe for 20 minutes or 30 minutes, just a little bit more of a heart rate elevated up activity, as opposed to maybe just moving around for 4 hours consistently. But either way, it's still is beneficial for sure.
Thank you.
Hi, John and Jack. This is Lon from Minnesota. Appreciate what you guys are doing tonight. Prior to the pandemic, I was going to Planet Fitness on a regular basis, 3 days cardio, and in between, that's my daughter's black lab. Anyway, 3 days a week doing the cardio, and the other 2 in between lifting weights. Pandemic hits, we shut down Planet Fitness. I don't have any weights at home. What are your recommendations for the toning for at-home type workouts?
I'll let John take this one. That's his specialty.
Yeah, so there's a lot of ways you can go through it. To be honest, I had to widely open up my repertoire and get as much knowledge as I could about every kind of exercise and every way to do anything. Starting out with in home, because there's clients that I go meet every day that I do stuff with, that I bring equipment with, and everybody else is, not everybody can afford that or have that time. So it's to make the best with what you have. And there's a lot of things you can do. Basically, I started out, you could go to Walmart and buy a $20 pack of bands and do just about any exercise that you could think of with that. And that's basically what I started with, something like that. There's ways you can mimic. Usually I don't say just hop on the internet and start doing a search of exercises, but there are a trainer, or there's a few places where you can get it. Most of them have an exercise poster that pops out right there with it. But there's anchors that you can stick to a door, and for $30 you can mimic just about every machine that you have for that. There's a huge thing is just body weight stuff. I mean, it really is. Not a lot of people out there can do 30 squats or do a whole bunch of push-ups or jumping jacks or something like that. The more and more I get into this, the more I realize, that 7th grade PE class, those calisthenics that they have you do, like there's a reason for every one of those. And a lot of times we can kind of get in the rut of, okay, I got to get the bench machine, and I can't. I got one guy who just turned 50 who wants to be able to do 400 pounds on the bench, and he's literally spent 20 years of his life doing one exercise, and that was the bench press. And then so when his wife tries to get him to go out for a walk, he's just kind of a wreck and falling to pieces. But he wonders why he can't get his bench press up. And so a time like this actually gives you actually the benefit of looking at total fitness that way, just doing things like going for a walk that way. And people be surprised how a short walk can get you to do that. A lot of it has to do with where you're living and what opportunities you have. Down here in Atlanta, we got the weather and everything else. If you're hard enough to get out in Minnesota and don't mind the weather, just getting out and finding ways to move that way and enjoying it. A lot of times what a lot of people do is just give me a list, an idea of what their day is, and finding ways to do that in their day with the activities they already have. I mean, if you're someone who likes camping or you like boating or stuff, there's plenty of things that you can do around those activities to be able to make it that way. You'll start realizing all the things that you do. You're back to the golfing question. If you drive up and park right next to the ball and literally could just swing at it from the cart, that's one thing. Or hey, if I park over there and just walk a little bit more to be able to do that. But like I said, for someone starting out, walking over to your couch and doing some push-ups on the back of the couch. If you can get to do about 20 push-ups, then you find a chair that's a little bit lower to do it to that, or you find a way to get to the ground. Your basic movements are finding a way to push something, pull something, and doing squats. And most people are, well, Jack would know, we had a boss that I had as a trainer, and the first day he'd basically just find a way to embarrass people. Just gave them 3 basic exercises you think everybody in the world could do, and then just watch how miserably they did it, and he wouldn't have to say anything. They're just like, okay, I don't need this bench press that can do, that I can put 300 pounds on it. I can't do 10 push-ups. So it's, you'd be surprised at how simple just those basic movements can be starting out. It's the best place to do with not getting injured also.
And John mentioned, it's not smart to go Google and just try to find stuff in most cases, but with this pandemic, there is a lot of resources now of like at-home workout plans on like YouTube. So if you want to kind of search around for like home workout things, there is a huge library now because people have created so many things and so many different ways to stay healthy during this at home. Because I personally got laid off from my job at is now Genesis Health Clubs is where I work at. And it was a challenge. My clients struggled big time because I was not there for them, and they relied on me to train them every single day at the club. And kind of like your situation where the gym closed down, they stopped exercising. And I'm encouraging them. I'm like, hey, you've been doing this 3 days a week for how many years with me, and now you can't do it one day on your own. That's not good for, like, I didn't train you to not have an understanding of how to do this by yourself. So it really does, I think, come down to a little bit of motivation, and in doing the basic things you know are going to be at least somewhat beneficial. Walk around the block, doing stand up, sit down from a chair type stuff. I mean, things that you know would probably help you if you just did them, but you don't want to because you'd rather just go to the gym and have the machines there to take care of all the things. I get caught up in that too. And we had the pandemic started. I didn't want to have to plan my own strength program at home. I was like, I know what I need to do, but it's just annoying. It's so much easier to have it done. And when I have these weights at my disposal or machines, and with my running, I had to stay strong and healthy. And I was training for a ultra marathon at the time. And I really the reason why I think I got injured is because I did put off some of that strength work that I needed to do because I got a little bit lazy with it. And getting yourself a detailed plan and write some things down and schedule it in your day is extremely important. For me to stick with my running, I basically made sure I scheduled it in every single day to carve out a chunk of time that I did something that day. And for me, it was 10,000 steps. So I need to run for at least right around 6 miles to get 10,000 steps in because I was sitting on my butt the rest of the day. And I needed to run probably 6 full miles to get that 10,000 in. And that was kind of my goal every single day to get 10,000 steps in. And it worked until it didn't work. But I was able to actually win my first marathon in August, which was fun. And then a couple weeks later, I, of course, am sidelined. But that's part of it, is just being disciplined.
Thank you both.
Could you guys go through a list of maybe some medical things that, yeah, granted, we know losing weight and being healthier is a great thing, but what are some more farther down the line health risks as far as like diabetes, heart disease? What are some things like that you can just kind of lift up and make sure are on our radars to be aware of in the future?
Yeah, this is a quote that is kind of inspired me to go into health and wellness. And I read this quote about the National Institute on Aging. And he said, Robert Butler is who started the National Institute for Aging. And he said, if exercise could be packaged into a pill, it would be the single most widely prescribed and beneficial medicine in the nation. So it's a medication that's out there to prevent all these chronic diseases that are happening. The main causes of death, which is cardiovascular disease and cancer, and pretty much anything that's causing us to die early we can delay that through physical activity in some way, shape, or form. So type 2 diabetes is connected to exercise, and cardiovascular disease, cancer. I think 80% of your mortality is connected to your own personal habits. And a lot of it's preventable, some of these illnesses. So understanding that the main causes of death, the chronic diseases, if we invest time now, and it's difficult because you don't see instant results. You don't understand that that there's things happening in your veins and arteries right now that you cannot see, because if you're not, lowering that cholesterol level or lowering those blood sugar levels through activity, it's going to happen, 10 years from now. It's difficult to have that delayed gratification because you don't truly understand, and it's tough to grasp with a lot of things in life, that if we invest the time now, we're going to see benefits in the future. And, that's partly why most Americans are in massive debt now, because they can't seem to save money and understand that if they invest in things, that there's a payout later on, but we seem to not understand that concept. So it's not just exercise, it's a lot of things that we have trouble with I think.
Yeah, and it's like I said, the idea of exercise is just a negative response to most people that way. So a client I had today is 81 years old and sits in a chair, stares at a TV, and that's his entire day. So his daughter, who is an ER nurse at the hospital here, and his wife, who seems to be 40 years younger than him, both said, if you don't come and help him to move, he's never going to get out of that chair, and he admitted to it. So the thing is, I worked at a rehab facility where basically you get the knee surgeries or hips. The town I was living in, the orthopedic capital of the world. So the one person came up to me and said, we don't get fit in this town. We just get a new hip or a new knee. I mean, that's what it did. So I went to the place where people went after they get that new hip and new knee. But it was also part of an old folks home. But the one thing I noticed right away was the difference in the clientele. And some of the people that I was the bus driver for a little time. And I took people to appointments, and there were people that were between 85 and 90 years old. They were up doing laps every day, and they were going to each person's room and saying, hi, how you doing? And they were the most active people. And I found a 55-year-old that had been there for 5 years, and her high school son actually had to come there and visit because she just couldn't push through the rehab process, and she'd already given up on it. And when I started seeing, at the same time, a study came out that showed what are the traits of these people that live to be 90 and 100 years old. And every one of them was just moving. They go to bed at 8 o'clock at night, and they wake up, bright and early at 6 o'clock and just start moving in their day, and not necessarily exercise. So the difference between this husband and wife is she'll get up and she'll go garden, and she'll get up and she'll take the dog for a walk. And there's not one moment in her day she would do something that you consider exercise, but she just nonstop the whole time. And the difference in them is just night and day. Like I said, she looks 30 years younger than him that way, and it is so active. And she came to me once and said, I know I'm not paying you for my stuff, but I had a question. I had this problem with my squat. And she proceeded to squat all the way down to the ground at 80 years old with no problem, and then come back up. She's like, I just kind of feel a little thing when I do this. I'm like, I don't have a client that can squat that far down to the ground with no problem. And that was all it took, was being active. And like I said, there's so many of us that have just lost things in our lives, or things that we like doing just because of that activity. And it's really not that hard to sit down and kind of look at these things that you put off, or that you want to do, that you can add in a day, that just gets you moving a little bit more. And that's really what the things have shown is all it really takes to do that.
Yeah, I kind of want to add to that. You spurred some ideas about just longevity and living better, longer. And just to kind of disclose some information about me and what some of my goals are in the future, I'm actually looking at changing careers and going to PA school in the next year, because I realized that through health, I'm so passionate about health and fitness and wellness and helping people out. Some of the people that need it the most are not walking into the gym, and they're not, the people that are walking into the gym are actually fairly healthy. They're the ones that are not morbidly obese. They're the ones that they need to get in a little bit better shape, and maybe they're trying to gain a bunch of strength or something. So there's so many people that were not, I really had no impact on, that I thought I'd be able to help, that I decided, well, really I didn't decide, God did, but he led me this direction to pursue medicine. And in the last 2 months now, I've been working as a care tech in the emergency department of in West Des Moines here. And I've been able to interact with a lot of different people coming in there. And I've seen quite a few people in their 90s. And just the other day, I talked to a guy that was in World War II in the Pacific Theater. And I asked him, like, what's your secret? Like, you sound, you're mentally there, everything. He's 98, I think it was. And I'm like, what, give me your secrets. He's like, no, there's no secrets. I didn't do anything right. I mean, I didn't do much, I don't know why I'm living this long. And I started asking him some more questions about his life. And he's like, yeah, I worked in a factory and I did some farming, and all of his jobs were very active. Every single thing he did was his activities. And I was like, well, I know why you're still in decent shape and you're living this long. Everything you did in life was you're moving around all the time. And I don't know about that. That's just what I did. And he didn't think it was anything special. But when I really kind of asked him questions, I realized a couple other people that I've interacted with, a lot of these guys that are living to their late 90s are farmers, a lot of them that have just been so active their entire lives. So I think that's pretty interesting to me, is to talk to these guys and the people that there was a 99-year-old woman that was a nurse that was, just super active in her entire life that survived COVID back in March. She's like, I already had COVID, so I can't get it again. And she's like, it wasn't that bad. Like, what? You're 99 and you're turning 100 next month, and you've beat this. And she was very active as a nurse. Her daughter said it was in her 70s, And I think that was really cool to kind of hear those perspectives. And I'm seeing a lot of different things. And in the flip side of it, the people that are coming in that are in their 50s and 60s that are extremely unhealthy, that look much worse. They have not been active. I mean, they haven't done anything their entire lives, and they haven't taken care of themselves, and they're aging very quickly. So it's very apparent in the emergency department when you see all these different types of people coming in and what they've done over their lifetime, and what the effects have been on their life. It's pretty eye-opening for sure.
John and Jack, thank you guys so much. What other questions do we have from the guys that have gathered tonight? Any additional questions or hypotheticals or what ifs or even opinions? What do you think?
Do you have any recommendations for sore joints as I get older? When I was younger, in my 50s, I was doing a lot of biking, and I found that was helpful. I started playing tennis. That was a lot of fun, and I found that it was helpful to have things like that would motivate me to be active. But my joints are, telling me otherwise. And so if you got any ideas there, that'd be great.
John, you want to go with the corrective exercise approach at this?
Yeah, I sure will. So this is something I've kind of gone back and forth with. It's something that I've studied a lot with very specific ways to do it, and it can kind of be overwhelming that way. The simple way to look at it is just our lifestyle that has created those. A joint has muscles coming from a couple of different directions. And we just get to a point in our life, if you have a job, and I can make this more specific for you. If any input that you can have will help you out more. A lot of times, the first thing I'll look at it is what you're doing. I ask people what their day is like. If you're someone who's sitting down quite a bit, that tells me immediately what muscles in your body are overworked. You wouldn't think that you're working by sitting down, but you're getting areas like a tight hip flexor, and tight quadriceps. And that means when you start getting up and down, your body is already feeling those tight muscles, and it's just going to use them solely. We plop into a chair instead of squatting down in the chair. We literally stop being able to use our hamstrings and our glutes that way. And when you have this joint with two muscles coming to it, if one muscle is not doing its job, that's where those issues are caused. It's basically just looking at what motions I'm doing during the day, and when I go to exercise or be active, don't replicate those same motions. Those motions are causing the issue. So if you're basically, you don't want to spend your time, you go to the gym and got all these 10 things to hit everything else. For most of us, there's a few things that our body's just overworking all the time during the day, and the only thing that we need to work on would be the other part of it. So with most people, there's about three main knee issues that people have, and it basically has to do with if your body is dominant in the front from sitting down and using those muscles. Another one's we're always walking on a flat surface. Our body has muscles that help us to balance. If you're always walking on a flat surface, they don't get that chance to, and then you start having pains on the inside or the outside of the knee. The easiest fixes are getting off of that. When people, I have some clients I just take on this 81-year-old, I just have him walk around his yard. I just have him walk on some surface that's uneven. Jack even had this conversation with me. He's just like, wow, John, when I started getting into all these trails and off all these flat surfaces I've been running in for decades now, the body just reacted so wonderfully that way to be able to use those. And so really it comes down to just some of the muscles we're not using is kind of causing that issue. So there's a lot of quick fixes that people give. It's easily be, someone like myself, a lot of times people can give you a quick consultation on that. A lot of times you just go through your medical history of the doctor saying this, and that can pretty specifically give you an idea. This is what I'm overusing, and this would be the way to do that. Like I said, that Jack had mentioned, it's not really so safe to be able to get online. But it's extremely, I almost want to say easy to fix those problems. It's just take 1 week out of your life to go see someone like myself, a physical therapist or a doctor, to kind of pinpoint that that muscle. And I've had a lot of times at the gym, the way trainers get clientele is when one trainer leaves, they dump all their people. And I always got people dumped on that had the knee issues. And for most of them, it took about 1 week with most people's muscle issues and other things to just get them doing things and being, oh, wow, that knee pain is gone. I mean, they were usually, if there's not a whole lot of damage there, which a lot of times they're not, it's just simple tightness and learning how to sit into a chair the right way. And it really wouldn't take much on your part to just find out something specific that way. For a lot of people, that wasn't some serious injury. I mean, I have someone right now who has fused back. So obviously we know there's restriction to what you can and can't do. But it's way even more than 9 out of 10 people that it's usually a surprisingly quick fix that can help them to overcome that kind of issue. If you're willing to look into it, and it wouldn't really take a whole lot to do that. So I'd encourage you to do that.
What, just curious, what are some specific joints that you're having pain in?
For me, it's my knees primarily, and then my lower back. And you're right. You know, I've had quite a bit of sitting lately, and so that's, I'm sure, part of the problem.
Yeah, I mean, the tough part about, like, when you start to get sore, you end up like trying to protect it. So you actually move less. Typically, is what happens is all of a sudden you start to feel knee pain, and when you should probably be doing the opposite. Finding, just similar to like a rehab program, like a physical therapist would rehab somebody, even though it's gonna maybe be a little bit sore, strengthening up those joints and those tendons around that specific spot, and finding more biomechanically sound movement patterns. So strengthening up the muscles that are around that joint, and then finding a way to make sure you're moving properly, so you're not, causing it to have that specific pain. Now, unfortunately, there is something called arthritis that we can't really avoid some of the pains, but I know for a fact that if you have arthritis and you're moving less, it doesn't make it better. So you actually have to keep moving, even with some of those joint uncomfortable pains, to potentially either maintain where you're at or to potentially improve yourself. So I would recommend just kind of like not giving up. I think a lot of times we tend to like say, oh, I'm just sore. This is me getting old and my knees are done. I've heard so many runners, older runners tell me that, like, oh, if you run, your knees are going to be shot. They're done for. Like, you'll never be able to run longer. That destroyed my knees. Well, most of these runners, they did have a knee problem at some point in their running career, and they stopped running. They're done. And they just said that had to be because of the knee. Well, they never decided to strength train and get back into it and try to like figure out a way to overcome those issues. I'm somebody that has had some injuries in my running career, and I could have stopped many times. I had I tore my meniscus in my left knee, and then I had a major hip surgery already. These are probably from football and rugby days that I've had these injuries that now running kind of exacerbates those. But I could have easily just given up and said, you know what, running's not for me. I shouldn't be doing this anymore. But I came back from the hip surgery. I had a labral repair, which is the socket of your knee was torn, some of the cartilage in there. And a year later, I ran the Atlanta Marathon, and then I just ran an ultra marathon trail race this summer, 50K, with minimal pains. And I was in massive pain coming off the surgery. Like, I wasn't sure if I'd ever be able to run again because everything hurt. And I was out of shape so much. And I was really doubting myself until I started doing some of the rehab stuff, started doing some of the stuff I knew was going to help me, but it took me a while to kind of like believe it and just trust the process. And once I started doing these things consistently and getting, small improvements, then it got much easier. And then like John said, I started running on more trails. So I was using a lot more muscle groups to go different directions. And the trail running up and down hills and unstable environments is what kind of healed me. I used all these different muscles now to strengthen up all the different angles, and all of my little tight sorenesses and aches and pains that were happening all over my body, my low back, started to go away a little bit. Not perfect. I'm still have some issues, but I feel much better, and I'm much stronger by doing it kind of an unstable environment and stressing my joints in different ways. So my advice for you is to kind of just try to find something and look up, maybe even do some rehab, even if you have to go get some physical therapy, to see what they can do for you. If there's some specific areas that are hurting, then go in and just try to see if somebody can help you out. And it can't hurt, I guess. And see if there is this one specific problem, or is it just general joint pain that's going to be there for a while? Maybe you could take a glucosamine supplement that we could kind of take away some of those things. There's different, things out there for that. It could potentially lessen that pain.
Well, thank you guys. We are getting close to the end of the hour. We probably got time. If there's an additional question, while we're thinking about maybe one final question, is there any? I know that John mentioned some YouTube videos, some additional resources out there that you can find. Are there any podcasts or thought leaders that you guys would recommend that those of us that are just looking to get off the couch should be listening to?
I'll kind of talk on that first. I unfortunately I don't listen to I love podcasts, but since all my research and all my studying has been done in exercise, I kind of that's my time to just dig into other stuff that I'm interested in. So I don't really listen to a lot of health and wellness podcasts because there's so much kind of weird information out there, and some of it I get frustrated with when somebody goes down this one specific path, like keto diets or whatever it is, and they're so obsessed with a specific path. And that's kind of what fitness has gone to, is people think this one way is the best way, and then they stress that everybody should do that specific thing. So I don't have necessarily a podcast per se. I mean, I know there's a lot of them out there. There's just a ton of podcasts. And I think the best way that I usually do it to find out the good ones is just Google top 10 podcasts in health and wellness. And if you can kind of find a couple of them that match up and say, oh, this looks like one that's popping up on all these lists, then it's probably a pretty quality podcast. And that's one way I find podcasts about faith and things like that I'm interested in. I kind of just, what is everybody else listening to and watching? There must be something interesting about this. And but I do think YouTube is actually really useful for fitness. I do really encourage you to potentially use that, because you're actually seeing people do exercises in the proper way. Listening to it is one thing, and having people tell you about it. But when you can actually watch somebody do exercises, and it seems to be a better connection to people following it and be able to do it the right way. So if somebody was to tell you how to do something, it's different if you're listening to it as opposed to actually watching it. And there is some really good, you seriously can just type in YouTube about a specific problem, and you're going to have a number of videos that pop up, and 80% of them are pretty good, actually. That they'll give you a general idea of what you should be doing. At least it's better than what you're currently doing, I think.
I'm gonna second that. With me, it's all about the visual aspect to get of it. There's a lot of bad places you can go with something like YouTube, but at the moment, it's actually being policed by people that are just so sick of all the bad information out there. There are literally, you look about top 5 of the sites right now that are people that are getting the most views on YouTube are actually people that just critique everybody else's, and so they really actually narrowed it down. I mean, you can literally go to the page and just look in the comments for a bit, for about 5 seconds to be able to find out the people that are just not giving the good advice, and they're really kind of getting shamed at the moment. And there's actually I can send a couple out there that people see. There's one that pops to mind. And it's someone that I just love, and it's someone that's helped so much. It's a physical therapist. His name's Jim Cavalieri, and he's got his own system, but he's basically spent about a decade making videos for every single thing that anybody's just kind of what this is. He has someone, hey, I got this knee pain and I feel it right here. And the next day he pops out with a video from a physical therapy standpoint. He was the New York Mets strengths coach for a while, and did a great job. As soon as he left, the team has had injuries left and right. I mean, I think they had their whole lineup 2 years ago was completely hurt. But he'll just, get pain in the knee, and he'll do a video. Hey, if you get pain in the top of your knee, this is exactly what you do. I mean, he literally grabs out a marker, circles it, shows you the exercise. Half the time it's one that he made up for it. And this is exactly what's going on from a physical therapist standpoint, but he also does what Jack and I do. And this is how this is what physical therapy is, but this is how this is supposed to move. You literally draw on his body. It's supposed to move this way. And this is why it's hurting. And you can stand there while you're watching it and be like, okay, yep, no, that's exactly what I'm feeling. And if not, you can literally write in, and within the next week, he's going to come back out. I mean, he's got literally a decade of free videos that he has specifically for every little specific thing. And mostly just him sitting here, showing this is how it's supposed to bend. Just start doing that. He does have his little gym, but most of the time it requires no equipment. And you can just go to his site and start putting in, knee pain, and it'll pop up 15 videos for it. So that's something I'd recommend specifically from someone that just about everybody goes to. I mean, most people that are critiquing sites say there's no reason to go anywhere else. there's nothing out there that's not just being copied from this one person. So there's something like that I really see, because a lot of clients, when they have that pain, and you can just, I mean, with some of these things, like I said, it's biomechanical, and by the end of that 1 hour, they're able to do the same thing without pain anymore. I mean, they're able to just squat down and then sit back up and be like, the pain's gone. It was literally just the way that their body was making them do it that caused that. Most people kind of lean a little bit forward when they're doing that, and the muscles are overstretched. They can't reach far enough, and the pain goes to the joint. When it comes to joint pain, your joint should never bear any load. It's only supposed to move direction. So anytime you have joint pain, that means one of those muscles that's supposed to be doing its job isn't pulling enough, and the work's going to the joint. And so usually it's a simple thing of, hey, your body's it's leaning a little forward, just sit back a little bit as you're doing it. That takes the pain off of that joint, and you're good that way. So I think most people were surprised, really. Like I said, it's not simple. We have a good idea. Jack and I have studied this for quite a while, but just really that's all it was for me not to have to feel it. I mean, I've had a doctor who worked on me. I had something shoved all the way up my foot, the nail that went through there, and I'm getting it operated on. And this guy's like, oh, yeah, I had pain and I stopped working. I said, come visit me. And tomorrow you could be fine and running again. But he wouldn't even do it. I mean, it was a doctor that seemed so excited about running, but he wouldn't even just come and spend that 1 hour with me to heal that. So, but most people are pretty surprised.
How does Mr. Cavallari spell his name?
I can look up for it. So it's Jeff, and it's Cavallire, and we can probably find some way to kind of maybe have a link up for it then.
Well, one secret about being an effective trainer is being able to find the resources to help your specific client, because I don't have the time to go and research all this stuff on my own time. So, it really is just, there's people that have studied this stuff a lot more than I have. And if I can maybe get a little bit extra help from somebody else that's an expert in that specific area, I'm going to use my resources, and I can vet whether or not these people know what they're talking about because of my background. For instance, I just designed a program for a 23-year-old that's in the military that has to pass this new test for the Army. And I didn't really know how to, I really had never done this before. And he comes to me and wants all these demands, and all I did was Google Army test fitness. And there was so many videos of people showing me how to train this guy. It was unbelievable. So then I wrote this program up for him that was basically copied off of all these other people. And he's like, oh my gosh, this is amazing. This is the best thing I've ever seen. Like, it wasn't really me, but I'll take credit for it, that I designed this amazing training program for him to get these times and these lifts and everything done, because I used the resources that were out there. They were free.
Jack and John, thank you guys so much for jumping on tonight. You did say that there's, if you've got additional questions offline, I think these guys would be willing to answer some questions. It's what's on the screen right there. We will get this posted out to the LMM channels for your questions right there. And again, I hope some of this information was educational. It made you think. And with Hal or with John Sundquist, I don't know if there's any closing words on behalf of national leadership.
I would just thank Jack and John for your time tonight and for all those who joined in the call. I hope that everyone learned something, and I hope that as this goes forward, other men across the country can find resources to help them stay fit and moving and not becoming sedative and sitting in their chairs all day long.
And let me echo that, John. We do appreciate both of you being here and sharing with us tonight. Didn't have a big crowd, but I think we were all informed. I'm certainly a little better informed. And judging from the shape of the two of you, you guys are living examples of staying fit. So, some of us old guys, we're just not quite as energetic anymore. But thank you a bunch for sharing with us tonight. It means a lot.
See everybody.
Have a good night, guys.
Good night, everyone.